In addition to looking at representation in Congress and also how Congress overcomes collective action issues, we also do need to look at how laws are made, right? If that's Congress's main power to make the laws, then we need to understand how they do that. It's a really long and convoluted process. So it starts with a bill being proposed, and that bill can be proposed in either the House or the Senate unless it's a tax bill. Then tax bills must be proposed in the House. Now, whichever chamber it starts in, we'll say the House just because all bills can start in the House, but only non-tax bills can start in the Senate. So we'll just start with the House, but remember, again, unless it's a tax bill, it could be starting in the Senate. So the bill is put into the House. Now, when it is proposed, it must be proposed by a sitting member of the chamber. That means the president can't propose a bill. That means you or I can't propose a bill. But we could call up our Congress member and say, hey, can you propose this bill? So our Congress member decides, yes, I am going to propose the bill. The bill is proposed and it is looked at, and after it's introduced, it goes to committee. Will sometimes go to more than one committee depending on how big the bill is and how many different areas it covers. But it goes to a committee with the right jurisdiction, and the committee works on it for quite some time. They have meetings, they have hearings. They finally then have a vote within the committee and decide whether to accept any amendments that have been made to it or not, and whether they're going to report it out of committee or not. Assuming it's reported out, it's put on the calendar, and in the House, we have the Rules Committee adds potentially their own rules to the bill and can hold it up there as well. Then we have debates and amendments on the floor, and here we have lots more votes and on amendments, on procedure, and finally on the thing itself. Assuming it is accepted and voted yes, and people vote yes, a majority votes yes, it goes to the Senate, where basically the whole thing starts over. It has to go to committee in the Senate, has markup, votes, etc., reported out, put on the calendar. There's debate and amendment, and in the Senate, remember, there could be filibusters. Assuming it is amended, it has to go back to the House, where they're going to vote on whether they want to accept it with the Senate's amendments or not. If they amend it, it may go back to the Senate because the two chambers have to vote on the same version of the bill and agree on which version. If it keeps going back and forth, we might see this conference committee set up where representatives from both chambers are going to meet and discuss, come up with a final bill, which then gets voted on by each chamber. Now, assuming either the Senate didn't amend it or it gets amended, but a conference committee negotiates and we have a final bill that both chambers agree on, then it goes to the president, who then can sign it or veto it. And if he vetoes it, it goes back again, and now we have a veto override vote. This is long, and I haven't even read every single step on this lovely little diagram that you have in front of you. Now, you'll notice that there are a lot of places where people could vote no. And I didn't even really highlight the places where action could just stop. The committee could just refuse to report it out of committee. A filibuster could happen, and rather than put up with the filibuster, the bill just gets tabled and it never goes to a vote. Right? There's a bunch of places where a bill can be stopped. Basically, this is a long process, and yet time is the enemy of lawmaking. The longer it takes for a bill to be made, the less likely it is that it will get made. So suddenly we have, amendments being made in one chamber and then going back to the other and back and forth. That draws out the time frame, makes it that much less likely that it will pass. If the president vetoes it and it goes back, that is another really long time frame here. We're lengthening again how long it takes to get this bill into a law. So we see then that time is the enemy of lawmaking, and it is a long process. in part because of this bicameral structure that the framers gave us, right? The two chambers having to agree makes it take longer. And then the president having to sign off makes it take longer. And we know that the structures like committees that are intended to solve collective action problems are also making things take longer. So even though they can solve collective action problems, they may in and of themselves start causing them. So this is a really long, hard process. And it means that not every bill that's proposed is going to get made. And in fact, almost 90% of bills do die in committee, meaning that it is much, much easier to kill a bill than it is to pass them. Right? The vast majority of bills do not get made into laws. And 90% of them die in committee. They don't even get to our floor votes. Now, this can be an interesting proposal, an interesting way for a Congress member or senator to take a position. They could propose a bill as a delegate of their constituents that they know their constituents are going to like, but that they also know may not really go over well nationally. But they can propose the bill knowing it's just going to die in committee. And then they can go back to their district and they can say, hey, look, I took this position. I did this bill for you. It's not my fault that it didn't go anywhere, even though they probably knew full well it never would. So we can see then that this lawmaking process, this length of it, has some interesting consequences in that lawmaking is hard and most laws don't get made, but even the laws that don't get made can serve a purpose.